Are you here for a roundup of Crystal Palace's transfer rumours this summer? Well, stick with us.
WF representing Palace, so let's tell you about Palace. Rolling straight to the ceiling, crowns and crystals, top like journeys, dishing out malice. Hold up, South London's grandest, far from bandits. Everything earned for a goal of elevation. Just passing the team over here might finish out. Bright future we can't vanish. SE25 any day, that's sellers. Rev up the engines, no more reverse reactions. Fan cams, bands on stream. Share up the team, support the dream team when Eagles fly, make noise and scheme. Dare to dream or dream to dare, taking a step to become supreme.
To begin today's Transfer Weekly, we are going to go to Rich first, who has got some updates surrounding some players linked to or maybe currently with Crystal Palace this summer.
Big up everyone and big up Dan for Transfer Weekly this week. I'm just going to be bringing you a few updates, not many, because obviously been a very quiet window. But the first update is regarding Jesse Derry. Now, to start off with, Fabrizio Romano reported last week that Chelsea agreed a deal to sign the 18-year-old winger, beating other European sides for his signature. And he said that the medical would have taken place last week, Friday. And then Peter O'Rourke also mentioned the same thing, saying that the medical has been finalised. So we should be hearing very shortly about Jesse Derry's move to Chelsea. Now, I know this is obviously, when he initially announced that he was leaving the club, I know it had annoyed a lot of fans. The reason behind him wanting to leave is because he didn't see a pathway to the first team. So this news about him going to Chelsea has obviously come as a bit of a surprise, because you think about Chelsea, there's not many players that obviously come through the ranks in their club. But then on the flip side, there's a possibility that he may get sent to Strasbourg and gain his experience there. But that's the first news regarding Jesse Derry, who is imminently about to sign for Chelsea. Regarding incomings, now Chris Wheatley tweeted out last week that we are closing in on a deal for Nice forward Evan Gassard, and he's a player that we have mentioned in the previous Transfer Weekly. And now the 24-year-old who got 21 goal contributions, which was 13 goals, 9 assists, apparently will win the race to sign him. And there are actually a few other clubs that are interested in him. Now, obviously, he was the only one that mentioned it up until Sebastian Vidal then mentioned it. And with regards to the Sebastian Vidal's one, it's a bit interesting because with his news, sorry, let me just get a tweet update up. He's saying that we're getting closer to a deal as well, and the fee's expected to be around 25 to 30 million pounds. But then there are other contrasting reports saying that Gassard's release clause is 20 million euros. So, look, this news is out there. We just don't know what to make of it at the moment. However, if we do sign him, it'll be a great signing. The question would then obviously be, if we do sign him, is he going to be a replacement for Ebbs, or is he an additional squad strength? Because obviously we need that going into the new season, especially with Europe on the horizon too. So yeah, those are our two updates at the moment. And if we hear anything more, we'll look to bring those out to you, whether it's formal short or in the next Transfer Weekly. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Rich. Now, the final segment of this, which is going to take up the bulk of the video, we are going to do a comparison between two players who we have already been linked with and we have already covered to some degree. The reason for this is because I imagine there's a lot of quietness around our transfers due to the impending situation with UEFA and CAS, which hopefully will have an update sometime this week. But nevertheless, we are going to look at these two players. So we are going to look at the two players, Hayden Hackney and Andy Diouf, both of whom we have been linked with already this summer, albeit the news has gone a little bit quiet. So I'm going to go through who these players are, and then we're going to do a comparison of how they fit into Crystal Palace's system. So starting with Andy Diouf, He's recently turned 22. In fact, he turned 22 on the 17th of May. He was signed by Lens for about £12 million, and he has a contract leading up to 2028. Apparently, Burnley were also interested, and they put in a bid, and that was accepted, of around about £15.5 million. This was a few weeks ago. Not heard anything since. So whether that is agent talk, I don't know. Nevertheless, he is a midfielder, some position that obviously we do need, and we will need to bulk out because we will be playing in Europe regardless of whether it is the Conference League or the Europa League. And he can play in various positions. I'll talk about it a bit later in the midfield. Next, we have Hayden Hackney. So he's recently turned 23. In fact, he turned 23 on June the 26th. He's a Middlesbrough Academy graduate, obviously currently at Middlesbrough. He has a contract that runs until 2027, so obviously a year earlier than Diouf. There have been other Premier League sides supposedly interested. I know Everton is one of them, but there hasn't been any big news story surrounding him, linking him to a particular team. Now, without further ado, let's go into how they actually would fit at Crystal Palace and actually do some comparisons. So we are here at the tactics board to give a bit of a deeper dive into whether I think Hayden Hackney or Andy Diouf would be better for Crystal Palace. And in order to do that, we need to understand how we played last season. Now, one thing to caveat, how we played last season did develop over the season. And also, it's important to note that in Glaston's first half of the season with us, we did play differently again. So whether they fit into last season's setup, it's kind of not irrelevant, but there's no reason to suggest that Glasner wouldn't change it somewhat to help these players fit in. And Glasner very much is the kind of manager who will look at a set of players and think, okay, how can I maximise their positives whilst minimising their negatives? But anyways, how did we set up? So obviously we set up differently in different phases of play. Obviously when we were playing out from the back, generally speaking, we would set up here. I know Gay's here and he's probably going to go, but, just bear with me. And it would look something like this. And there were different facets to how we played as well. So, for example, when we were maybe a bit more advanced up the pitch, there were different things that we did to try and gain a man advantage in different places. So you'd have Gay here, for example. Lacroix would be marshalling in the middle at the back. Richards here, and Munoz would be higher than Mitchell. And I think this is because Wharton didn't play the first half of the season very much, or at least when he did, he was at 50%. You kind of saw Ebbs drop into there, and Sarr would very much push here. And I think the reason why that happened was because Eze is the kind of player who will attract opponents towards him. So what you then end up with, I know this is a 4-4-2, but let's say Ebbs receives the ball there, the other players are probably going to gravitate towards him because he is a known threat. And push those up a little bit, a known threat, and so therefore he's going to pull players in, which obviously if you pull players in, you're going to drag lots of nice space here. You're going to drag even players all the way out there, just slightly over. In fact, they would be anyway, because that's how you would mark the player. And generally, basically, you have more space on this side than you did on the left-hand side because of that. Now, what Kamada and Munoz did, which is obviously the focus, because we're looking at defenders here. Generally, if Mitchell had pushed up and let's say we couldn't find a way through, Eze's received the ball, but he's had to go back because of reasons, and the team has pushed out, generally speaking, what you would find is that you would have Kamada or whoever's in that position, because you saw Lerma and Hughes doing it as well, pull out to the side, and effectively you're left with Wharton and kind of Eze in the middle. And again, it's just to draw out these players, draw out the opposition towards this end of the pitch, so we can create space here in order to into hurt teams, especially with Munoz and Sarr. That is their strengths. And we get that man advantage. And, even if they don't come to you, well, you've got a player here who can perhaps go into there, pick out a pass. He's going to have some time. Wharton is very much a freak of nature, but he is a metronome. What you don't want in this system is the players to be constantly marked all the time. And in fact, they were a lot of the time. And if they are, you want them to be able to jump in front of the defender and turn, which Wharton is certainly able to do. But we found that difficult when he wasn't playing because those players, I'm not saying that they couldn't do it, but I don't think they could do it consistently enough that we were confident with that. And that's why you then had Eze kind of dropping into his space, kind of make a pseudo midfield free, really. But either way, what do you want in these kind of players? I mean, with Kamada, which is a position that, generally speaking, if we are looking to break down the opponent and we're a bit further up the pitch, he's probably going to be the one that is pushed a bit further forwards. Not quite an attacking midfielder, but very much more advanced than this player here. This player here very much keeps the tempo. You want a player who will never lose the ball, ideally, and is able to pick out perhaps passes in between these lines. Obviously, in this position as well, that would be great. But ultimately, what you want out of this player, you want progression through the lines. What you don't want is someone who will sit there, turn around and pass it back to the defenders or pass it back to the other midfielder and make it easy for the opponent. That's what you don't want. So, how does Hayden Hackney and Kamada fit this in terms of the attack? They are both very good at progressing the ball. Now, how they do this, I would say, is slightly different. In fact, I know it is very different. And because of this, I think they can play in different positions. But firstly, let's take Kamada off because we are going to be focusing on this position here. Firstly, I'm going to talk about Diouf. Now, Diouf is exceptional when he's on the ball and is running. His ball carrying abilities are sensational. He's able to, even if there were players around him, dragging players in, that he's generally able to get out of there and is able to then cause harm to the opponents by running through and generally being a menace, a ball carrying monster, as someone would probably say on Twitter. He's also able to pass as well. So let's say he does receive the pass here from Eze. He's able to lay that pass off, or vice versa. If he's receiving that pass from Wharton, he's able to move around, take a good touch, and is able just to lay off a little pass. The only thing I would say with Diouf's passing is that I didn't see a huge variation of passing. It was very much he receives the ball and then would kind of lay it off to the appropriate person. I didn't see any line splitting passes. I also didn't see, let's say he had the ball here and he's got an opening to pass it out to Munoz. Again, this might be because of the tactics that he plays under at Lens, under Will still. But generally speaking, you didn't see that long diagonal pass happening regardless. And I thought he was equally good at this end of the pitch as he was at this end of the pitch. So I don't think there's any issues there. Definitely press resistant. And when he's playing in Ligue 1 as well, I don't have any worries about that transferring over to the Premier League. I mean, if you want a Palace example, look at Sheikh Doucouré. Obviously, very unfortunate with injuries, but when he first came, arguably our most important player, and was able to get out of situations very, very comfortably despite being under pressure. The only thing I think about Diouf that is a bit of a negative. Is that I'm not convinced by his off the ball ability when it comes to defending. So let's say the other opponents have the ball. I just feel like, and again, this might be a tactical thing that has been drilled into Lens, maybe. But whilst he is happy to, let's say the player's there, whilst he is happy to run towards the ball and kind of press it, I just feel like, because he's a tall guy, I don't know how tall he is, but he's quite a big guy, and he uses his body very well when he's dribbling and when he's on the ball and he's shielding players and etc. But for whatever reason, he doesn't really get stuck in as much as I would like him to in those kind of situations. Again, like let's say like you're doing a high press, like he's more than happy to run and follow that press. But when it comes to actually making the challenge, I'm not too sure. Now he does rank around about the bottom 16 to 17% of midfielders when it comes to tackles and clearances. In and of itself doesn't really mean anything because it could just be that they keep the ball a lot, or it could be that they're just a relatively passive defender, which isn't a bad thing. But I just feel like when I was actually watching him, not he was pulling out of these situations, but I just feel like he could go in with just a bit more oomph, and I think that would really do well. And I think this is a problem because obviously we have a two-man midfield, and I mean, obviously, we don't know what the situation with Eze is going to be. But you look at that, and obviously, I know Gay's not there as well. But let's say you look outside the pitch. Let's say Gay does go and is replaced by someone else. They're going to be new to the system, so they're going to take a while to bed in potentially, unless Richards goes over there or whatever. But regardless, whoever's going to be there is going to be relatively new to that role. So you're not necessarily going to get that cover immediately. With regards to that. And Wharton, whilst I think he is good off the ball defensively, he can't compensate for two players. Maybe someone like Sheikh Doucouré can, maybe not post his injuries, but I'm not too sure about that. And when you combine that with Eze potentially staying, I know Eze is probably also semi-tactical as well, but if you have two players on this side who are a bit weak defensively on the ball, personally, I would worry about that. Is that compensated by Mitchell? Can that be compensated by a really good defender on this side? Perhaps. Like perhaps we do sign a defender who is a bit more attacking this side and helps out these players, and then maybe you have Richards on this side who is defensively very sound. So that is a potential. Off the ball in terms of his attacking is good. I mean, he's always about, I would say, wherever the ball is on the pitch, he's generally in that vicinity trying to get on the ball. He likes being on the ball. And when he's ball carrying is as good as it is. I mean, I'm really not surprised by that. Now, let's have a look at Hackney. So Hayden Hackney, I think, would play in the same position. Apologies, I'm going to need to... Got another technical problem there. So Hayden Hackney would also play in the same position. Now, where they differ is that I think Diouf, if we really needed to, could play in that 10 role if we really needed to. He did do that a little bit at Lens, but ideally not, obviously. Now, Hayden Hackney's kind of the other way. First and foremost, definitely in this 8 position. He kind of plays that at Middlesbrough already anyway. But I think in a pinch, he could play there. Although he would be behind the pecking order for me after Wharton, obviously. And even after Sheikh Doucouré, maybe even Hughes. But that said, in a pinch, in a season where we're going to need depth, it is possible. Now, where he differs is his line-breaking passing is fantastic. So when we're doing this over here, so Mitchell's pushed up, or in this case, maybe it's Souza, who's the attacking player. Eze can shift up a bit more because they know that, You know, they're excellent on the ball, etc., etc., etc. Something like this. If Hackney's on that ball there, if Hackney is on that ball there, and Eze finds the space in between the lines, or even Mateta, it doesn't have to be Eze, obviously, it could be Mateta. He's going to fire that ball and he's going to find them. And as long as they've got a good touch, then, you know, your quid's in, you've got options to play through the lines there. Can that be figured out by opponents, you know, filling the lines, perhaps? But it's a really, really good thing to have. The only thing I would say about Hackney, and this isn't a case of he's not good at ball carrying. It's just that I didn't see a lot of it in the games that I watched with Middlesbrough. I didn't see a lot of it, so I can't comment too much. The bits I did see were very good, and under pressure, he was pretty decent. Maybe not as good under the pressure as Diouf, which you could argue is maybe a bit of a worry, considering he's playing in the Championship and would then need to upgrade to the Premier League. But then we did see Wharton do it. But then I would say Wharton was significantly better at beating pressure when he was in the Championship. But what you get with Hackney is that you get a wider array of passing as well. So you're going to get your line breaking passes. He's also going to be the kind of player who will, let's say Mitchell has made that run there. He's going to be that player who will put that player in. He did a fantastic assist for a player as well. Line breaking pass again, something like that through there, ran onto it and then scored. Defensively, I would say he is slightly better than Diouf, but I wouldn't say it was a big advantage for Hackney over Diouf. Like, he will get, like, if that apologies, like if that player there was to have the ball, he would get stuck in a little bit more. Thing is, with defensive stuff, it's always hard to say what is the manager telling them to do that. What is a player doing that? It does get stuck in a bit more. Not loads, but then I feel like at Middlesbrough, he has that. They play with a double pivot as well, or at least it looked like it in the games. And he was very much the advanced player with, I think it was Conway, was the deeper player. So that's going to be the trade-off that you're basically going to get. Do you want a player who is slightly better defensively, who is really good at passing and is going to put players through, or do you want a ball-carrying midfielder? You know, obviously for us, it's impossible to say because Glaston's going to find a way around it. Because my only fear, if you have someone like Hackney in the middle, is that you've already got a Wharton and you've already got a Shek Decore. You've already got someone who wants the ball to feet and will pass it through the players. But I don't know, maybe that just means that Eze will just push up even higher. Sarr will push up even higher because you've got two players who are pretty press resistant and are both able to pick lines through there. And then maybe that pushes their players back a bit, which gives more space to attacking fullbacks, perhaps. And then with this as well, maybe you do have, I keep doing that, do have players who maybe we are slightly better when we're resisting counter-attacks as well, because you've got your double pivot already there. But Hackney will offer something similar to what we've already got, I think. So overall, who do I think is better? Like I said, it's a trade-off between do you want a ball carrier or do you want a progressive passer? If Diouf was a lot better defensively, or at least shown me a lot more in the games that I watched, that he was just able to just go in with just a bit more ferocity, I would be picking him all day long. His ball carrying is fantastic and it offers something that we don't already have. If we do go for Hackney, I do feel like we would just have two pivots who are, obviously it's not bad for them to be both very good at passing, but I feel like, you know, they both kind of do the same thing. And Diouf isn't a bad passer at all. Again, it's just more of a case of I didn't see a wide variety of pass, but then he would progress with his ball carrying and then he'd be laying off players and stuff like that. And obviously, ultimately, it comes down to the money. Diouf has one more year left on his contract than Hayden Hackney does. Is Hayden Hackney's 1 year older, if that makes that much of a difference. Like I said, I think if Diouf, if there was a guarantee that Diouf would be able just to go in with those tackles just a bit more ferociously, be able to maybe position himself a bit better to pick up interceptions, then I'll be going for him all day long. But there is a poll in the comments which you can choose yourself. You've had a bit of a lowdown on both the players. What do you think? Tell us in the comments. But anyways, thank you very much for watching this week's Transfer Weekly. It's been a bit different to the others. The others are usually like just a general roundup and we'll all get involved. But because of the lack of news, we've done it like this. If you haven't watched the others, please do. We put in a lot of effort into them and they are just a nice roundup of everything that's been reported over the summer for Palace. Anyways, thank you all very much for watching and